Hello, my name is Rob Palmer here in Springfield, Missouri. Today, we're going to be taking a few minutes to talk about a very interesting and a very tragic aspect of crashworthiness cases. First of all, let's talk just briefly what crashworthiness is. It is the whole theory that product defect, where the vehicle enhances or greatly increases the injuries that one would have expected in the accident because of the design of the vehicle. For instance, where you would have expected minor injuries, there are fatalities or quadriplegics or brain damage. In this particular videotape, we're going to be talking about fuel-fed fire cases and fire cases in general in vehicles. These are some of the most tragic and horrific cases I deal with. Every focus group I've ever done has shown that the most feared way for anyone to die is by fire. I think we all have that horrible nightmare of burning. And here's a videotape to show you how quickly a vehicle can catch fire. And we're going to talk about why they catch fire here in a second. But this Suburban hits the wall, and you may not be able to see, but it's already on fire. We're talking within 5 or 6 seconds. And I could continue to show this to you, but two gentlemen will eventually come out of the vehicle totally engulfed in flames, but there's no reason to show you. Obviously, they're both fatal. There is a standard on this, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 301, but it's extremely weak and basically does not prevent vehicle fires. They still have been happening since there have been cars, and they're still happening on our roads and highways today. General Motors has probably said it best of anyone. They point out that at highway speeds, this is from the 1970s, by the way, this particular document you see on the screen. They said that even back then, there should never be a fire, even at highway speeds, and we're talking 70 miles an hour back then. And they also pointed out that no one should ever die by a fire if they survive the accident or the crash. So, I mean, that's the standard right there. If they would have survived the crash, then they should never die by fire. Here are the things you're going to be looking for a fire case. First of all, it can involve any vehicle, from a semi-tractor trailer truck down to the smallest little vehicle on the road. So it can be any type of vehicle. Then you want as little fault as possible on the victim. And then it requires these cases to be viable, requires fatal or severe burns. And many times the severe burns are actually worse than dying by the fire because of all the horrible surgeries and pain they go through and all the limitations for the rest of their life they experience. And then the final of the 4 points is that they must be injured or die from the fire and not the crash. So you need evidence that they were alive post-crash. For instance, yelling and screaming, moving around. Lots of times when we do autopsies, we find smoke damage in the lungs, which means, of course, they were continuing to breathe after the accident. Now, why do we have fuel fires? Well, there's several reasons. The first of which is where they mount the tank. This is a classic side saddle fuel tank design from the 60s and 70s. As you can see here, the gas tank, the object in white underneath the driver's seat, is the gas tank. And it's fully exposed to a side impact if the vehicle's hit. And that's because it's outside of the frame rails. Another classic example, which almost everyone knows about, and this is mounting, is the Pinto case. This is the Pinto on the right, but as you can see in the drawing on your left, the gas tank is behind the rear axle. So if the vehicle were hit from behind, it was like a bomb, and it would explode into flame without allowing for any time for the occupants to get out of the vehicle. Another is the way the tank is mounted is in the classic Mustang. This is a drop-in tank. If you look at the Mustang on your right, if you open the hood of that Mustang, it would look like this on the left. That's the gas tank. It's the floorboard of the compartment in the rear of the vehicle. And that's a filler neck that you see over there on your left. And if it gets hit from the rear, that filler neck is driven directly into the tank, rupturing it, or the bumper gets pushed into it, again, turning these Mustangs from 64 through the early 70s into fireballs. And here's a really good drawing that shows you how they fixed the side saddle gas tank cases. They simply took the tank location from the outside of the frame rails on your left of the drawing and put it inside the frame rails, as you see on the right of your drawing, which has become much more common today. And that does protect the tanks much better from being ruptured during an accident. Another cause of tanks failing in accident are sharp objects in the vehicle. These are fuel tank mounting bolts. They will rip through a tank and just tear it open in an accident. And there's easy ways to take care of these things so they won't rupture the tank. These are fuel tank straps, support straps. And if they're designed improperly and embedded in the tank like this, they actually can shear or tear the tank if the tank is moved violently during an accident. So that's another object that can puncture the tank. Another objects are the leaf spring mounts. Those are the objects in red on the lower side. But it just so happens when I found this photograph, I noticed those, what I would call angry bolts there in the middle, the small circles. That long protruding bolt can just go right through a tank. And so those are other issues that can occur. And this is just a fuel line mounting bracket that would also just rip right through a tank. So they have to be protected. There has to be a lot of thought given to where you mount and protect the tanks, which certain vehicles do a very good job of. Now, another problem with gas tanks is the filler neck. This is as you can see, the lower filler neck has actually been burnt severely in an accident as opposed to the one above it. What happens is these necks get torn from the tank when there's an accident, and they rupture the tank as they get torn, as they get hit. And so there are designs now out there, so when that happens, the tank is sealed. It does not rip open the tank and cause fuel to spill. Here are just some classic ways to guard or shield tanks. As you can see in all three cases, the items that you see below are tank guards, and they cover the tank and shield the tank so they can't be ruptured. And these are, you'll find they call them skid plates, they call them all different kinds of names, but these things are designed to protect the tank in an event of a collision, especially from the rear. And they're extremely effective. And unfortunately, even today, a lot of tanks have no guards. A lot of vehicles have no guards on their tanks. There's also, it's not just gasoline that causes fires. It's also the engine fluids, oil, even windshield washer fluids. Other things are combustible because they have alcohol in them. And what's circled there is that for an engine fire to be dangerous, it must have a portal of entry into the cab. So if the floorboard or the toe board is not designed correctly, and there's an opening and their fluids are spilled onto the hot engine in an accident after the accident has occurred, they can cause a fire. It's not horrible if it stays right on the engine and you're able to get the people out. But if there's a pathway for the fluids on fire to get inside the vehicle, as in this case, the circle in red shows an entry. You can actually see a sign behind it where the engine fluids went right in and unfortunately burned a young man to death. So this is another way that you can have vehicle fires. This is not as common as the gas fires, but they still happen out there a lot. Also, litigated a series of these semi-tractor trailer truck fires, and what happens is the fuel tank, as you can see in the upper left, is fully exposed to being hit from the side, or in this case, someone hit the front wheel of the semi-tractor trailer truck and it pushed it back into the tank. As you can see, what happened if you push that front wheel back, and it ruptured the tank. Unfortunately, the gentleman who was driving this particular vehicle eventually died from his burn injuries. There's also, people don't appreciate, semi-tractor trailer trucks don't have escape hatches. So there's been a whole series of litigation because of the failure to have escape hatches. And now many brand new semi-tractor trailer trucks have escape hatches on the roof and on the bed of the the tractor. So if it tips over or it's on its side, you can open it up and get out in case of a fire. Here's an example of an escape hatch on your left. And as you can see on your right is the better placement of the gas tank. Still holds as much fluid, but now it's no longer a bomb sitting right underneath the driver. And if you just imagine you're going down a highway, the flames, if it does catch on fire, are going behind the cab and not directly underneath and into the cab, which gives the occupant time to slow down, stop, and get out of the vehicle, hopefully with minor or no injuries at all. As I mentioned, there's been a series of litigation on these issues. Now, what do you do if you have a fire case? As I've already mentioned to you, there should never be fires in a vehicle. And if you do have a fire in a vehicle and someone gets seriously hurt or is killed, you need to preserve the vehicle because there's a very high likelihood of there being a good crashworthiness case. Do not accept any offer of settlement until a product case has been completely ruled out. And I do understand that sometimes the energy in the accident is just so high, there's nothing any design could have done to prevent the accident, but that is rare. When you find the vehicle, and lots of times they've been severely damaged and burned, but take numerous photographs from all sides of the vehicle and do everything you can to make sure, as I mentioned above, that the vehicle is secured. Take time to call us. We're glad to evaluate any case that involves a fire. And you need to do all of the above as quickly as possible, not just because a statute may run, but because especially in fire cases, the vehicles are usually stored outside and the elements, rain, snow, will degrade the evidence and will degrade the viability of the case. So it's very important to get on these cases as quickly as possible. And if you have a case like this, don't hesitate to contact myself or Eric Jensen, the Auto Defect Division. We'll be glad to look at your case. Thank you very much.